Welcome back, National Football Show. Mark Farzetta, Bill Colarulo joining you in for Dan Cilio as the day off, getting the weekend started early. You got anything coming up, Bill, for the holiday weekend? You doing anything special? Anything fun? Anything good?
Just hanging at the club. I got probably going to get a little golf in. Take the kids to the pool. Nothing too big. I think you got a big plans this weekend, don't you?
that club. When you said the club, I'm like, damn, man. How I know you got young ones. How long?
The golf
okay,
club.
all right. Yeah, just a little, discotheque. I got big
more.
I got going away, hitting up Virginia, going on a little fishing trip, but mostly my wife's family all getting together. I am making brajol. I'm making a lot of brajol in the gravy, in the sauce, right? All that stuff. My mother-in-law is doing some kind of vegetarian lasagna. So I was like, oh, vegetarian. Let me ruin that idea. So I got the brajol. I made the mix and everything for the meatballs. I boiled my eggs already. I got the gravy on the pot right now on the stove as we speak. Smell it in the house. Nothing like it, man. Nothing like it. But I'm making about 30 brajol. We do the small brajol in the family. We do the individual portion brajol. We don't do the big flank steak wrapped and then sliced. You know what I mean?
That's how my grandmom does it. Real big.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You gotta let that soak in the gravy for hours and hours on end, man, all day. Yeah. But it's a full day, as you know. It's a full day. Can I need to confess something to you, Bill. I need to confess something to you. I might be president of the Justin Herbert hate club. And I know we're going to get into our predictions. And I don't know if you saw these predictions on NFL.com, but they asked their experts MVP honors throughout the league, okay? As you would assume, who do you think is the number one guy?
Would it be Patrick Mahomes?
That would be the one, Patrick Mahomes, okay? Number two on this list would be Mr. Joe Burrow.
If he's healthy. He may not even play in week one.
But here's what I want to know. Does it help you to, not that you can ever plan this, but does it help you to get injured early? Because for your case, if you come back from your injury and say week 2, okay, or week 3, and then you roll through the rest of the season, you can rack up the MVP votes, right? But if you're Jalen Hurts or you're Carson Wentz, i.e. 2017, you get hurt late in the season, you miss time, then I guess you don't get as many votes. I guess it's the recency bias of the MVP voting, I guess.
Yeah, it's just like the NCAA football, right? You could lose a game early. You can't lose a game late and still make it to the top 4. But
perfect analogy.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree with you. But Justin Herbert, I don't share the same hate that you do. I think he's a very good quarterback, and I think he wins in spite of his head coach. I am not a fan of Staley as a head coach. I've seen him make some really bad decisions on both clock management, offensive play calling, and I think Herbert is winning in spite of him. But I think I know where you're going with this, that they have him ranked higher than Jalen Hurts to be able to win the MVP, and that I would disagree with.
Mm-hmm. I don't think that Justin Herbert is terrible. All right, let me just make this clear. I don't think that he's terrible, but it's like people talk about the MVP and they got him above Jalen Hurts in this instance. They have him right behind Joe Burrow. I understand it's not the best possible scenario for any young quarterback being out there in Los Angeles with the Chargers, but I just don't get what people love about Justin Herbert, and I don't get why people love talking about him like a top 5 quarterback, top 3 in potential MVP voting. Now, for the record, they have Justin Herbert just ahead of Jalen Hurts. They're both tied for 3 when it came to their votes from their NFL experts. 14 votes in total went to Patrick Mahomes. 6 went to Joe Burrow. 4 votes went to Justin Herbert and Jalen Hurts. But Justin Herbert got the tip of the cap with a plus 50 over under there. And then Jalen Hurts got plus 900. Odds plus 900. I just don't get how Jalen Hurts even compares in anyone's mind or anyone's voting when it comes to the potential of being the NFL MVP. Being on the same level of Justin Herbert doesn't make any damn sense to me whatsoever.
You're preaching to the choir here, Farzy. I mean, I think that Jalen Hurts should be number 2 behind Mahomes. I'm not saying he should be number 1 in light of the season that Mahomes did have last year. But You look at that performance in the Super Bowl, what Jalen Hurts did in the biggest game of the year was historic. The stat line that he put up has never been done in NFL history when you look at his passing yards, his rushing touchdowns, no interceptions. I know the haters want to say that big fumble. I would have felt that fumble was more his fault if he had gotten hit and fumbled the ball. The fact that it kind of just slips out of his hand was just so fluky. But you look at it, and this is why I think the Eagles won't have a Super Bowl hangover when we talk about Jalen Hurts. What did Jalen Hurts do after that horrible fumble in the Super Bowl that led to 6 points the other way? He takes the team right down the field on a long drive and scores a touchdown. This guy has the ability to overcome adversity. And yeah, Jalen Hurts has to be the number 2 going into the season in the MVP odds, in my opinion.
Now, here's what's interesting. Josh Allen and Aaron Rodgers tied for the 5th most votes in the from NFL.com when voting on the MVP award here. So Josh Allen's been knocked down a couple of pegs, but somehow Justin Herbert has taken over that spot of being the controversial number 2 or number 3 guy on this list. So that's just odd to me. So I don't understand why he gets so much love and respect nationally. I just don't see. And this is coming from a place of like, okay, I say I hate the guy, but like I don't hate the guy, okay? But I don't get the love and admiration that, like, what has he done in the league to warrant so much admiration from around the NFL when it comes to the quote-unquote experts, the national experts voting on something like this, and especially taking over a spot from a guy like Jalen Hurts, who should be 1, Patrick Mahomes, should be 2, Jalen Hurts, and then even after that, if you want to go with Josh Allen still, and you want to go with Aaron Rodgers possibly being in New York now, change of scenery for Aaron Rodgers, and then Justin Herbert cracks into the top 3 conversation just doesn't make any damn sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, and the biggest stat that people should look at when you're looking at a quarterback is they want to look at passing yards and interceptions and touchdowns, but the biggest stat should be wins and losses. And you look at Jalen Hurts' wins and losses, he's 23-11 in his career, and 7 of those losses came in 21. But you look at Justin Herbert, the guy's only 25-24 in the NFL. So I see what you're saying. You look at wins, but what I said earlier is I do think that it's very tough with a head coach like Staley, and I think he's lost him some games. But I think that the people that love Justin Herbert, because they're looking at the passing yards, there's no doubt. The guy threw for 5,000 passing yards in 2021, threw for another 4,700 passing yards in 2022, and he has a pretty good touchdown to interception ratio as well. So I think that's what they are looking at. But when you look at Jalen Hurts, you really have to factor it all in. The rushing yards, the wins, the losses, the leadership. And that's what I think when you talk about most valuable player. We're not talking about best throwing quarterback in the NFL. You're talking about the most valuable player to their team. And you can't put Justin Herbert above Hurts.
Okay,
all right. But look at one of the guys, Farzi. You got to look at one of the guys that voted for Herbert. It's Mike Florio. He can't go against his boy Chris Sims.
Right, he's got to make him look good. Absolutely, you got to make him look good. But to stay on this topic, when it comes to the MVP and it comes to Jalen Hurts, what do you really need to see? The question I've enjoyed this offseason, like last year, it was the very generic, probably every sports talker's favorite conversation, asking a question about whether or not a young quarterback in your city is the quote unquote guy. Is he the guy, right? Well, Jalen Hurts answered that question with a exclamation point, okay? But when we talk about MVP and we talk about being the best quarterback in the league and not being the runner-up or even winning a Super Bowl, whatever it might be, what is it that Jalen Hurts needs to do to get it? And that's the question I have kicked around for the last 6 months. What does he have to do to get more respect, whether it's on a Chris Sims list, whether it's on an NFL.com MVP voting list or whatever it might be? What does he really need to do? Like specifically, what does he need to do? And there's 2 things that really jumped out to me about what he needs to do. And you tell me if you're on the same wavelength as I am. Number 1, he's got to do it again. He can't just 1 year. Okay, Carson Wentz is the perfect example of this. Now, I do not believe that Jalen Hurts is Carson Wentz. I believe Jalen Hurts will have a much better career than Carson Wentz. And as its time has gone on, it looks like that's not going to be nearly as high as a bar to get to anyway. He already has it, in my opinion, in the rearview mirror. But as far as one great year as a starting quarterback in the NFL, he's got one great year. He's an MVP candidate, blah, blah, blah. So do it again and keep on doing it. Prove to everyone that wasn't some flash in the pan. After that, even more specifically, and I hate that this is what it's got to be because I think it takes away from his the uniqueness of his game. And he, of course, even said throughout training camp, I want to embrace the uniqueness of my game. But those passing yards got to go up. It's looked down upon, unless you're Lamar Jackson. It's looked down upon for the most part if you're running the football as much as he is. If you're not throwing for touchdowns, if you're not throwing for yards, it's like the national pundits look at it and go, oh, well, he's supposed to throw the ball. He's not supposed to run the ball. And I think even a little bit of throwing to the running backs, not even necessarily downfield as much, but dump offs, check downs, whatever it might be. If he does that maybe even a quarter more than he did last year, then you're going to see those numbers skyrocket, and you're going to see the national people looking, go, oh, look who's throwing the football now. And I hate to say it, but I think that's what they're looking at. So it comes to being as good as he was last year and then upping those passing numbers. And I think that's what will catch the national media's attention to really put this guy as the MVP of the league.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think another important factor, and we touched on it a little earlier, is he's got to play a 17-game season.
Sure.
You can't afford to get hurt at the end of the year again. That's always going to kill you in the MVP race. But, one of the things that a lot of these national experts, quote unquote, they obviously did not watch a lot of the Philadelphia Eagles games. And I don't want people to think that I'm just a Jalen Hurts defender. I am a big fan of his. I think he's a very good quarterback. But I think if you look at the way the Philadelphia Eagles games went last season, there's a reason why Jalen Hurts didn't throw for more yardage. They didn't have to throw for more yardage. There were so many games in that regular season where it was over by midway through the third quarter. And when you have a dominant run game like the Eagles did, they would have been crazy to keep throwing the football. So there were a lot of games where third, fourth quarter, we were leaning on the run to just keep dominating the line of scrimmage, run the clock, and that does hurt him. You're right. The fact that he doesn't have those big passing yardage, but we saw it in the Super Bowl. The guy's capable of doing it. He threw for over 300 yards in the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. And by the way, I know there's some people that look at Patrick Mahomes and they say, oh, if Jalen Hurts would have stayed healthy, he would have been the MVP. I think what it would have come down to is that the Eagles got Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown in the offseason, and they added him with Devontae Adams, or Devontae Smith, excuse me. And they obviously had a great 1,000-yard rusher in Miles Sanders. He had a great year behind a great offensive line. The overall selling point to make Patrick Mahomes the MVP last year, not just talking about games missed by Jalen Hurts, but Patrick Mahomes, is the fact that he lost his best wide receiver in the offseason, and he still put forth an MVP season and still had an incredible year with the Kansas City Chiefs. So I think that's why, if it came down to it, Jalen Hurts stays healthy last year, Patrick Mahomes plays the way he did last year, I still think that Patrick Mahomes would end up getting the MVP based on losing Tyreek Evans in the offseason.
Tyreek Hill.
Jeez, excuse me. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, not taking anything away from Patrick Mahomes, he does have the best tight end maybe in NFL history on his team. But what he was able to do with that receiving core was really remarkable. And that's sometimes the shot that people do take at Jalen Hurts is, well, look at all the talent around them. But outside of Patrick Mahomes, who really is on another level, you look at the other quarterbacks, they all have weapons. You look at Joe Burrow. He arguably has a better wide receiving core than the Eagles do. Arguably, it's close. But you look at Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, that receiving core is unbelievable. So I don't like when Jalen Hurts is talked about negatively because he has weapons. All of these guys have weapons. Don't talk to me about Patrick Mahomes. He's maybe the greatest quarterback we've ever seen. So you can't compare these guys to Mahomes, but all these other quarterbacks have weapons. I mean, you look at Tua in Miami. Look at the wide receiving core he has. We were talking about Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. So a lot of these guys have weapons, and that's sometimes the Hurts haters love to talk about. And I thought all that would have been put to rest when you saw Gardner Minshew come in, and he couldn't reach the same level of success that Jalen Hurts did with that same offense. But
no, now I'm starting to think about the Eagles' backup quarterback role, and I'm starting to be concerned again about Marcus Mariota. I know we'll get into it again when we talk about it again at the top of the hour about some concerns we have regarding the Philadelphia Eagles and that offense. And I did mention earlier that if you're digging to talk about the quarterback, the backup quarterback, or backup roles or third string roles, then odds are you got a pretty damn good football team. So we'll get to that. But I want to move on to the next possible award here. Offensive Player of the Year. According to NFL.com, it's going to go to a rival in the NFC. It's a team Bill, that a lot of people are looking at, especially the national pundits, will be the Eagles' greatest threat to getting back to the Super Bowl in the upcoming season. Can you take a wild guess as to who the offensive player of the year would be, according to NFL.com?
Well, I'd kind of be cheating because I have it up in front of
me. You're a bastion of honesty. Thank you.
Christian McCaffrey from the San Francisco 49ers is the number one vote getter for the NFL.com's Offensive Player of the Year going into the season. It's hard to disagree. I mean, look, Offensive Player of the Year, there's a lot of candidates that could become Offensive Player of the Year. But when you look at what Christian McCaffrey's able to do in multiple aspects of the offense, not only can he run the ball, but the guy catches just as many balls, if not more, than most wide receivers. I mean, I think the guy had 100 catches one year. So you factor all that in with his rushing yards and his receiving yards, you could see why a lot of people are pointing to him as maybe being the Offensive Player of the Year.
See, here's the thing. All running backs, like, I think this is like, he's been at this level for a long time. But I think all running backs kind of need to go this route. And Darren Sproles did it for a long time, not at the level that Christian McCaffrey has done it, but Darren Sproles in terms of versatility. I mean, I think this is just the way the league is going. I mean, with the kind of, it's not even a revolt. If a guy like Saquon Barkley is saying, hold out, and then like, okay, I'm here, like with no holdout really, then you've kind of lost a lot of your competitive advantage. You lost a lot of your leverage. I mean, you know about leverage, and you have situations now with Jonathan Taylor where it's like, oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Seek yourself a trade, see who's going to pay you. And it's nobody. I think if you're a young running back, you need to learn how to catch footballs, man. It's not just about running between the tackles anymore. It's not even about speed, bouncing out to the outside. It's about playing. I think Deebo Samuel called his position the wide back. Okay. I don't know if this is going to be a back wide situation with Christian McCaffrey and other running backs coming up through the ranks now, but you have to be able to be a pass catcher. And we even talk about it now with the Eagles and DeAndre Swift and Kenny Gainwell and having two guys that can catch passes. You're going to have that. It's not just the wear and tear on the body anymore of a running back, running the football through the offensive line and into the defensive line and then being met by a linebacker or a safety coming up with a full head of steam. It's about lining up a guy like he used to have in Darren Sproles and putting him in the slot. It's about a guy like DeAndre Swift, who Nick Sirianni has talked about, who has wide receiver. He doesn't have running back hands. He's got wide receiver hands. Every running back that's coming up through the ranks has to be more like Christian McCaffrey. And I know that that's a tall order. I'm not saying they have to be Christian McCaffrey. I'm saying they have to have the versatility of Christian McCaffrey to be lined up at the slot position. They need to be lined up as a wide receiver. And that's what has put this guy up there with Offensive Player of the Year votes on NFL.com, is that versatility. And now we're seeing it throughout this offseason more glaring than we ever have throughout the entire NFL, where running backs have been belittled to a point of bargaining away their leverage. Go ahead. I double dog dare you, Jonathan Taylor. Find someone's going to trade for you and pay you. Saquon Barkley, yeah, go ahead and hold out. See what kind of deal you can get. Miles Sanders going to the Carolina Panthers, where the Eagles get, 4 running backs for the price of just Miles Sanders? If that doesn't devalue and belittle the position, I don't know what does. So when you have these young running backs coming up now, if they want to be Offensive Player of the Year, if they don't want to just be labeled a running back and they want to be able to do everything else, they're going to have to work on that versatility. And that's something that I think the NFL is also going to embrace as time goes on, because you see it a lot more in college with guys catching passes and not just running the football. And that's being developed more and more with the pass-happy game of football, not just in the NFL, but at the college level as well. So you're going to have to see these guys really start to take that next step in terms of offensive versatility.
Yeah, just listen to some of these names, Farzy, that got cut this offseason. Ezekiel Elliott, 27 years old, cut. Dalvin Cook, 27 years old, cut. Leonard Fournette, 28 years old, cut. Kareem Hunt, 27 years old, not signed. Joe Mixon, 26 years old. They had to take a pay cut to stay. Aaron Jones, 28 years old, had to take a pay cut to stay. Saquon Barkley, only 26 years old, had to settle for the franchise tag. I know he renegotiated, didn't get much more. Josh Jacobs, same deal. Franchise tag, just renegotiated, didn't get much more. And now Jonathan Taylor asking for a trade, doesn't happen. Austin Eckler asked for a trade, doesn't happen. Derrick Henry, there was rumors he was on the market, doesn't happen. the value of the running back position just doesn't exist anymore. You have to be. Christian McCaffrey is a wide receiver. The guy is a wide receiver. He caught 100 balls last year. That's a wide receiver's numbers. So the NFL of the 90s, where you had this cowbell running back who carried the day, just doesn't exist anymore. And I talked about this on another show. Just look at the last few Super Bowl winners. Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl last year. Isaiah Pacheco, 7th-round draft pick, is their running back. New England Patriots, the Los Angeles Rams win the Super Bowl the year before that. Sony Michel, Darrell Henderson, and Cam Akers are their running backs. Year before that is the Tampa Bay Bucks. They had Leonard Fournette on a 1-year, $3.5 million deal. The Kansas City Chiefs in Super Bowl 54, Damian Williams. Super Bowl 53, New England Patriots, Rex Burkhead, James White, and Sony Michel. And then we remember the Philadelphia Eagles in 2017, Jay Ajayi, LeGarrette Blount, and Corey Clement. You don't need that bell cow running back anymore, the guy that's going to carry the day for you. So that's why they're not paying these guys. You just don't have to be successful in the NFL anymore.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. So I want to ask you this. I've been thinking about Jimmy Graham. All right. If you remember, when he was going through his contract dispute with the Saints, he was listed as a tight end, but he wanted to be paid as a wide receiver. And I remember the Saints even pulled up his Twitter profile where he described himself as a tight end. Now, I don't think that was a nail in the coffin, but that's just how far they're willing to dig in order to prove, no, you're a tight end. Like, our our running backs now just going to try to label themselves as slot receivers to try to get more money? Because if you're a running back now in the NFL, that's the only way you're going to get it, is if you're catching ball. And I agree with you. Christian McCaffrey's a wide receiver more than he is, or a slot receiver more so than he is a running back. But obviously he came up that way with the Carolina Panthers. But now the game has evolved to a point where the last thing you want to be on a team is a running back. And then after that, it's probably a linebacker on most defenses now. Like the Eagles don't want to pay linebackers. Right after running back, it's linebacker. So when you look at those two positions right now, they are being dwindled down to guys having to change the way their positions are being described in the NFL and the way those positions are being played. So to go back to the list real quick, Christian McCaffrey is number one. And then after that, that's where you have the run of wide receivers. Jamar Chase, who you mentioned, is number two on this list. Justin Jefferson, I was surprised. I think Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in the NFL right now. And if you're going to talk about other guys being ahead of him, Jamar Chase obviously has a pretty damn good quarterback throwing him the football in Joe Burrow. I think most people take Joe Burrow over Kirk Cousins, but just all in all, I think it's Justin Jefferson. He was ranked number 2 on that NFL Top 100 list. It was Mahomes, Justin Jefferson, and then Jalen Hurts as the top 3 players in the NFL. Then it's Tyreek Hill, Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts, Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson are all tied for 5th on NFL Offensive Player of the Year going into the 2023 season. Justin Fields already?
Yeah, he's the sexy pick for everybody right now of having a great season. I think what Jalen Hurts did from year 1 to year 2 is what a lot of people are seeing with Justin Fields, is they're hoping he takes that same leap as a starter from year 1 to year 2 as a starter. And if he can, we saw it. The Eagles played the Chicago Bears last year. You see how talented Justin Fields is as a runner. And if he can start to be able to add throwing to his game, he could be a really, really tough quarterback.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. And again, these are predictions, so I understand. It makes sense if you're looking at a guy like Justin Fields and you're saying, all right, he could take a Hertzian type leap from year 1 to year 2, then all right, go for it. I'd love this as a fan of football. I'd absolutely love to see it. I think a lot of it's going to come down to the idea of the Eagles overall just taking that step forward as an offense. The thing that holds the Eagles back, and we'll get into this in a second, we've talked a lot about the good things that surround the Eagles this season. We'll continue with this list of potential players of the year, defensive, offensive. We'll also talk about coach of the year and all that stuff, rookies as well. But there are concerns surrounding this Eagles team. And I know in the opening segment of the show, Bill, you and I were going back and forth on some things that might be a little too optimistic. Some things that when facing the Eagles might be the rose-colored glasses. Well, when we come back, we're going to break down a couple of the storylines surrounding the Eagles that are big question marks surrounding this team going into the year. We'll revisit the topic of whether or not the Super Bowl hangover is going to be a real thing with the Eagles. We'll also run through the NFC and AFC when we talk about potential Super Bowl matchups when it comes to the big storylines surrounding the rest of the NFL. Dan Cilio has the day off. That's Bill Colarulo. I'm Mark Barzetta. This is the